My name is Jarrett Seltzer, and I'm honored to be here with these two lovely ladies today to discuss the finale of the Jodi Arias trial. First, attorney and former prosecutor, also former court TV correspondent, now operating her own website, Karas on Crime, currently out in Phoenix, Arizona, the lovely Beth Karas. Hello, Beth.
Hello, Jarrett.
How are you?
I'm doing well, but I'm eager to get home since this trial has lasted 2 months longer than anticipated. No surprise, I suppose.
It's true, but it's about 20 degrees here at home right now, so enjoy the Phoenix weather while you can.
Indeed.
Also out in Phoenix, Arizona, from the Trial Diaries and my co-host on Trial Talk Live, the lovely Jen Wood. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
It is good.
I'm also looking forward to seeing the end of this case. It's been very long.
It's true, but you get to keep the weather.
I do.
So.
I do. It's going to get hot. But yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's get right to it. We've got some questions. First, Beth, I want to know what you thought of Nurmi's second closing, or his final closing, however you want to look at it.
Well, you know, I thought that Kirk Nurmi did a pretty good job this time around. I think he learned from the first trial in 2013. His rebuttal closing, continued to attempt to humanize Jodi Arias. He had 9 mitigators to talk about, and he did a pretty good job doing it. Whether it's going to convince the jury to give her leniency and recommend or vote a life verdict, I have no idea. But I think Kirk Nurmi did about everything he could.
I'm with you. I thought that second part too. I thought his cadence was nice. He was kind of up and down a little bit more, much easier to follow than I thought on his first part of his closing. What about you, Jen?
I thought Kirk Nurmi did a very good job, as Beth said, humanizing Jodi Arias. He really kept using words like she was a mentally ill girl. He was pointing to Jodi Arias, having the jury look at her, make eye contact, saying, you know, are you going to kill Jodi? He was using her first name. I thought he came across very well. He was soft-spoken, and I really think he gave this jury something to think about, sparing Jodi Arias' life from the death penalty.
I'm with you. And when he did that final point over Jodi saying, "Are you gonna kill this girl?" I was pretty shocked to see not a single juror's head move. Do either one of you make any assumptions about them not looking over at Jodi on something like that?
Well, I can tell you that throughout this trial, I had thought, I think it's unlikely that 12 jurors are going to vote death based upon how I saw this case going in large part because this jury did not hear the guilt phase evidence in the way the first jury did. It just didn't have the impact, what they did learn about the crime itself, the murder, the heinous murder. It just didn't have the same impact. So I thought, wow, I don't think 12 are going to vote for death. But as the case was winding down in terms of evidence, and I was looking more and more at the jury, I started thinking, whoa, I think there are some death voting jurors on this jury. It was just an intuition I had looking at some of the men in the back row, and they were just always stone-faced looking at Nurmi, and I thought, this is not going to be so easy. And so I've kind of flipped on thinking this is going to be a life verdict. It's going to be a deadlock or maybe even death.
Got it. Jen, anything else you want to add to that one before I go on to my next?
I agree also. I also had a very good view of some of the men on the jury, and they, I think, are thinking, maybe I've experienced somebody like Jodi Arias in my life and maybe can relate to her, kind of craziness with Travis Alexander. And I think some of the things Kirk Nurmi tried to hit on, like the porn, and he got into a lot of that, really isn't going to resonate with this jury. And I'm like Beth, I also feel that getting a death penalty verdict is a very good possibility.
I'm with you, and actually, I'm going to go into it because my next one is a lot has been said on social media from what we've seen about Juan's closing. A lot of opinion around it. For me, the first time I actually thought there could be the death penalty was when he went over the mitigating factors for just a very quick, 3 minutes towards the end of his closing. Beth, what was your opinion overall with his closing?
Well, I thought that Juan Martinez was rebutting mitigation most. I mean, he really focused on rebutting the mitigation. Okay, but he still had to give the jury the facts of the crime and have them understand the aggravator. Jurors had to accept those first two verdicts, the finding of cruelty as the aggravator, and of course the guilty verdict of first-degree premeditated murder. But it was absolutely within his right under the law, and I've talked to attorneys not involved in this case, to have gone over a lot of the premeditation, a lot of the facts that the first jury heard, and for whatever reason he opted not to. I don't know if the judge made rulings saying if he did, she was going to let Nurmi do certain things. We're not aware if those rulings were made. At least they're not public. And I'm also been told that the judge would be wrong if she made a ruling like that. Juan Martinez had the absolute right to do more in terms of just spelling out how diabolical and gruesome this slaughter was. He did some of that, and he very effectively showed autopsy photos of Travis Alexander. Maybe that's enough, and it might be. But the jury did have, or he had the right, rather, to tell this jury more than he did.
Got it. And Jen, your overall opinion on Juan's closing and your thoughts on it?
I thought he did very good knocking down some of the mitigators by showing Jodi Arias is a pathological liar, and that they can look at some of them like the PTSD and say that was based on a lie, which could possibly knock that one down. He could say, she kept saying she was a pathological liar for the abuse that she experienced from Travis Alexander. So maybe that would knock that one down. But I'm like Beth, I did want to hear more of the pre-med. I think that was incredibly important. I do trust his judgment on what he did and how he got it out to the jury. But I know he is taking criticism for not going more into that and showing how premeditated this was. But the judge did tell the jury they have to accept the fact that she is a premeditated first-degree murderer, and maybe he just thought that would be enough.
Well, and that's interesting too, because it gets me right into this this next question that I have, because this is kind of where I finally was first seeing maybe it will be a death penalty, which is, you know, if the jury strictly goes, well, we'll start with Beth. So if the jury strictly goes where they've accepted phase one, they've accepted phase two, like they said, and you got 9 mitigating factors in there, in your opinion, what mitigating factor do you think could pull through and save her life?
You know, I don't know that there's any one mitigating factor. I think it's pretty clear that she has borderline personality disorder. I agree with Jen. I'm not, well, I don't know if you think she doesn't have PTSD, Jen, but I don't think she does have PTSD.
No.
And, you know, the abuse was really, the allegations of abuse as a child and at the hands of Travis Alexander come from Jodi Arias. And she's not a credible person. I know she was given these tests with validity scales and that show that she's not malingering, she's not exaggerating, making things up. But I can't tell you any one mitigator that I think could do it for her. And the jury has to look at the totality of the circumstances. They just have to make sure that one mitigator, at least one, has been proven by a preponderance of the evidence, and then they have to decide whether whatever mitigating evidence they find on an individual basis they decide is sufficiently substantial to call for leniency in light of the facts of the crime and the aggravator in this case. So that's why jurors have to understand the facts of the crime, because how can they determine if the mitigation is enough till they really understand the facts of the crime and what that first jury heard? In any event, if they believe any of the allegations of abuse, and there's the emotional abuse, I mean, we do have, you know, the verbal, the words that were used and are in writing and were introduced to the jury when he was upset with her, maybe that'll be enough for some jurors. That's corroboration of what Jodi says. There's not much corroboration for the other stuff.
I got it. And Jen, you have any opinion on the mitigating factors and what's in there that you think that they may be going for?
I agree. I think Kirk Nurmi was really going for the mental illness. Don't kill my client because she's mentally ill. And I think that's what they're really reaching for. He did try to show that she had told this jury that she was remorseful, that she was sorry for her crime. But I don't know if that's quite enough. And I don't know if her demeanor was anything like it was when she was on the stand during the first trial. You know, that's probably a problem. I mean, that turned off a lot of jurors. Although, you know, as it went further on, it did capture some. So I agree without knowing a lot of what happened during the first trial. I know during jury selection, these jurors did say that they were exposed to some of the first trial, and they do know who Jodi Arias is. So maybe they know a little more about the first trial and what happened than we are actually aware of. So it's just going to be, this is really interesting. I am just on pins and needles waiting to hear how they're going to vote and how this is going to turn out and what they may say after the fact.
I gotcha. All right, well, moving on, Beth. I'm putting this one right to you. Juror number 2 speaking to another juror so that she could get on, and isn't that against the judge's admonition? Like, what is that all about? And how? Just go.
Well, we know that one of the 4 questions the jurors had on day 2 of deliberations was whether or not a deliberating juror could switch with one of the 2 alternates, the female alternate who was number 2, in seat number 2. We don't know how that came about, and perhaps the court explored it, talking to the jurors individually. We just don't know because the courtroom was, we weren't in the courtroom at the time. And it's possible that they had a deal between them, that they made friends, during the course of the 4-month trial, and they had a deal. If I don't really want to deliberate, and if I'm an alternate, or will you ask if you're deliberating and see if we can switch maybe, because I really want to be on. If I get picked as an alternate, I'll be upset. Maybe that happened beforehand. We don't know.
If it happened afterhand, would that be against the judge's admonition? No, I get your
yes.
Yeah.
If it happened after, I would have thought both jurors should be removed, the deliberating one as well as the alternate. But they started with 7 extra jurors in this case, and lost 2 in the first 2 days, and then 3 more. So they'd be down to 1 alternate if they got rid of number 2.
Were you part of that first day there?
I was part of the day 2. Day 2. And a juror number 9 came up to me, took her badge off, and came up to me outside and asked me if I was Nancy Grace. It's like, again? I'm being asked if I'm Nancy Grace.
Beth actually got on the stand and was cross-examined by Juan Martinez.
How'd she hold up?
Yes, he did, and he wasn't very nice to me either.
Did he give you the yes or no? Any yes or no's?
Well, he accused me of following her into the courthouse, like to engage in conversation. I said, follow her. I was talking to a media person outside giving a soundbite when she was watching me. She walked in. I said, court was beginning. I had to get up to the courtroom. So did she. And we were at the security waiting for our handbags. That's when she turned to me and she said, are you Nancy Grace? You look familiar. So I was like, I wasn't following her in. I was coming back up to the courtroom.
Oh, man. I wonder if the pool camera got that. Hopefully that'll get released. I'd love to watch that.
I want to add something to this, is that I have found out since this has come about that this same incident happened during the Marissa DeVault trial. I mean, I've never heard of this, and now we're coming to find out that an alternate wanted to actually be on the jury and switch with somebody in that trial. It just sounds so crazy. We've never heard of this, and all of a sudden now we're hearing that it just happened in another death penalty case.
Was the switch made? Was the switch made?
No.
Oh, it was a request. Ooh,
it was a request. Again, another request. And I think that maybe this juror just was really having a case of sour grapes and really wanted to be deliberating.
She was a big note taker. Number 2, took copious notes regardless of whose side was presenting evidence. So I think she had a lot of notes. I mean, she's not going to be able to keep her notes. She took her notes. She can't use them now. But she's not excused. I mean, she could still replace somebody. You never know.
Yeah, and she's the one, when she was leaving, she had the mad look on her face. Our other juror had the disappointed look. She had the mad look, in my opinion, from what I saw there. So I'm throwing this...
The man that was released, I really liked. He was another juror that paid, really great attention. He was attentive. He took notes. I thought he was an excellent juror. And, yes, I saw total disappointment in his face.
Absolutely. I'm throwing this one to you first, Jen, being a resident of Arizona. I mean, what's your overall opinion on the penalty phase being allowed to happen twice? I think it should be a one-shot deal. It really seems really difficult if I was a juror to sit and just be on the sentencing phase and potentially kill someone without watching phase 1 and 2, whether or not I accept them. What's your opinion on that, Jen?
I agree. I don't like the idea of having this retrial. I think it's a really big waste of taxpayer dollars, and that it should go to a judge to make the decision. If the jury just can't do it and they can't come together to make that decision of giving her the death penalty, I just think the judge should have just decided, end it right then and there. to go all back over this again and then risk the jury not knowing what happened in the guilt phase of the trial, and now we're bringing them in to make this monumental decision with kind of limited information. It's just too much, and then you can end up getting the life, them voting for life anyway. So I'm for not doing this kind of retrial.
Got it. And Beth, I mean, from my understanding is this only goes on in Arizona. I think maybe it was like one other state. Curious on what your opinion is with this.
Well, there are states like Georgia, for example. If it's a hung jury the first time, it defaults to a life sentence. The benefit goes to the defendant. Arizona, you get 2 shots at getting the death penalty. California, I think it's unlimited. I don't think there's any limit, although in reality, prosecutors will just take death off the table, excuse me, at some point. Excuse me.
You can have your water. It's okay. Everyone can have their water break. Go. Everyone together.
But the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that when it comes to sentencing, in a death penalty case, it is the province of the jury, and a judge can't do it. So while that may have been the law in the past, it can't happen anymore. And in fact, that's an Arizona case that the U.S. Supreme Court decided. So as much as it may be the most expedient way, it's not the law. The jury has to decide.
Understood. And so, Beth, when the Alexander family got up and walked out during the end of the first part of Nurmi's closing, I was listening to you talk to some of the media regarding that, and I just wanted to get your legal opinion on what happened there.
Well, I don't think the judge admonished them, at least she didn't in public, but I have seen judges in other courthouses say, I'm not going to have any shenanigans, I don't want to see tears. Judges will actually tell families of victims, no tears, I don't want to see any emotion, nothing in front of the jury that could in any way affect the jury. What the Alexanders did could have caused a judge to go ballistic in another courtroom, maybe even in this courthouse, I'm not sure, but in other states. So it was a risky thing they did, and we didn't see them do it again. Some have told me that it could have caused a mistrial. I don't think this judge would have done that after 4 months and millions of dollars being spent. And I understand why the Alexanders did it, but it is something that would not have been tolerated in other courtrooms.
Understood. And Jen, any opinion on that? Or do you also believe that the bailiff was then put at that back door following, I don't know if everyone caught, but he was standing back there for the remainder of court?
Yeah, and to show you how some judges don't put up with that perfect example would be in Aaron Hernandez when they had Odin Lloyd's mother on the stand, and the prosecution wanted her to identify Odin Lloyd's body after he had died, and the judge looked at her and said, "You cannot cry. You cannot have any emotion in front of this jury while you're identifying your dead son." And so that is an example of how judges can rein that in. When the Alexanders did get up and leave, it was a statement. I mean, it was an obvious statement that they wanted the jury to see. It was while Kirk Nurmi was talking about Jodi Arias addressing the family and her remorse. While nobody really saw the jury look at the Alexanders get up and leave, they saw her leave. I mean, they got peripheral vision. I mean, they saw her. So it definitely was a statement. I felt like the judge maybe at the bench maybe was saying something to the attorneys about it. She looked really upset, but that's speculation. But I do think that the bailiff was positioned in the back of the courtroom to keep an eye on everybody.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he was there the rest of the trial.
Yeah.
And so both of you ladies are sitting out there waiting on verdict watch, and social media is starting to comment saying that they're taking too long. I think we're, 8 hours, 40 minutes was it? Or maybe that was just the last time I checked. First, you, Beth, if you know the amount of time, and do you think this jury is taking too long?
Well, by my count, it's about 9 hours and 45 minutes, so almost 10 hours. And we're pretty vigilant watching when they're taking breaks. At least when they leave the jury room, we can see there's no deliberating when all 12 aren't together. They could be taking breaks in the jury room, we don't know. But 9 hours and 45 minutes behind closed doors, presumably deliberating the entire time. Are they taking too long? Absolutely not. There is this sort of benchmark that we used to have at Court TV, a day of deliberation for every week of trial. So, there's 17 weeks of trial here. However, some of those weeks were 1 and 2 days. So I suppose if you consolidate, you collapse those weeks into how many 4-day weeks there were, is probably closer to 8 or 9, maybe not even, maybe 8 4-day weeks. So I would not be surprised if this jury goes most of next week. I'm hoping for a verdict next week. I think they're working really hard, but they have a lot of evidence to plow through. I mean, especially if they have the opportunity to look at some of the evidence from the guilt phase.
Absolutely. Jen, your opinion on the amount of time the jury's currently taking?
I agree. This is not long at all. This is 10 hours, 9 hours, 45 minutes worth of deliberation. This is nothing. I mean, you're deciding the fate of somebody's life. And I mean, even on an aggravated case I watched, it was not aggravated. It wasn't a death penalty case. They took almost 2 weeks. And it wasn't, a major, it was second-degree murder, that's what it was. And they took them 2 weeks to come to that conclusion, and they were even hung on some of the charges. So I don't see this being a big deal at all. I think they'll definitely deliberate into next week, and I think it's normal. I think it's diligent of them. I think the fact they stayed in for lunch and didn't take an hour-and-a-half lunch, which they would have been criticized for, had they left and taken that hour-and-a-half lunch, the public would have criticized them for doing that. So the fact that they stayed in, they brought their lunch, which was very thoughtful. I think, everybody's sick of the food around the courthouse, including the cafeteria. And the fact that somebody's wife or the husband, the man, one of the jurors, made lunch and brought it in was really thoughtful. And it shows that this jury is united and they're working together. And it actually makes me feel more like this jury is not going to hang, that maybe they're going to come to a conclusion. So I think they're a really good jury so far. They're showing that they're hard workers. And I think people just need to relax and have faith in them.
Yeah, no, when I saw them coming in with the crock pots and all that kind of thing, I was like, well, this seems like maybe a jury who's getting along, because I typically like to cook for people I like, but I don't really like to cook for people I don't like. And let's also remember the DeVault sentencing phase was, 5.5 weeks?
Ugh, I thought I would never get out of there on verdict watch. It just went on and on and on and on and on. And you could really see a lot of tension in their faces when they would come out. And there was a definite divide among them. We really worried about that jury hanging. This one, they seem to all kind of stick together, right, Beth?
Yes, they do seem to be united. We actually saw a group of 10 leave yesterday. Maybe they just wanted to go outside and get some fresh air, because they do walk out for short breaks in the afternoon and mid-morning, maybe like 10-15 minute breaks. So I mean, there's no indication that there's a lot of dissension in there. They may just be plotting through the evidence. We don't know how they're taking votes, if they take votes daily. I mean, we don't know how they're doing it. We won't know until after they talk about it, if they do.
Right.
All right, I've got some user questions from Twitter before our last question. First one's going to you, Beth. Danielle R. asks, what happens if the jury is deadlocked again?
Well, a second deadlock defaults to the defendant. The benefit goes to Jodi Arias, and it's a life sentence. As we know, there are 2 possible life sentences in Arizona. One is, they call it natural life. They don't call it LWOP, life without parole. It's called natural life in Arizona. The other one is life with the possibility of release after 25 years. Arizona got rid of the parole system, so they call it release. But the judge, in her instructions, told the jury, at the moment, there is no mechanism in place to implement that release. So it sounds as though it's rather academic, regardless of what the life sentence is, it's, she's in there, she's not getting out. That's the judge's decision, however, and that'll be at a later date if the jury deadlocks.
Got it. This one's also for you, Beth. Karina B. asks, how many appeals does the state pay for if it's the death penalty?
The state's going to pay for all the appeals. So I can't tell you how many there will be. There could be 4, there could be 5. There'll be state appeals. Once she exhausts all her state appeals, at least a couple. If there are new issues, there could be another new appeal within the state system. Then it'll go to federal. She'll have a couple appeals there. I mean, she's got a lot of appeals in front of her, but they'll all be free. She is going to have everything paid for, and I'm sure that whether she gets life or death, she's working on that appeal now.
Agreed. This one's going to you, Jen. Stone Girl asks, will the Alexander family be able to address her during sentencing?
They will. They're going to be able to get up to the podium and talk to the judge and give a statement on if, the judge should be giving her that 25 years worth of release or not. And it's a very emotional sentencing, usually with the family members speaking on, for the defendant's behalf. I've seen a mother speak on Marissa DeVault's behalf during that trial. She got up there and pleaded for her daughter's life. And so I don't know if we'll see that from the Arias family. They seem to be pretty quiet. But when it comes to the sentencing, we may hear from them. But I can definitely say we will hear from the Alexander family during that sentencing.
Got it. All right, this one's going to you, Beth. James H. asks, is there no legal way for any of the money that Jodi Arias is making to go out to the Alexander family?
Well, not at the moment. If the Alexanders file a civil lawsuit and they get a judgment against her, and Jodi has some assets that they can seize after the judgment, then they can get some money. But right now, there's nothing in place that allows them to get any of her money.
God, and that kind of goes back to like OJ, right? I mean, after OJ, it wasn't until the civil trial when money was going to be allowed to move around, correct?
Right. Once there was the judgment against him, the 33 million or whatever it was, then the Goldmans had a right to seize whatever assets they could find. And there were the stories out there that OJ had been hiding a lot of his memorabilia, and when he found out that some people he knew had some of his memorabilia, he tried to get it back, and that's what led to his current incarceration in Nevada when he went in with guns blazing. Well, guns pulled out.
It sounded so much more fun when he said blazing, though.
I liked it.
Las Vegas hotel, and he tried to get his memorabilia by force.
And Jodi Arias has done this in a way. She is running a business out of jail. I mean, Sheriff Joe has admitted this in interviews that she is legally able to do this. And I think a lot of that money is moving her around her aunt and some family members. And so, that gets a little sticky when you're trying to get that money back.
Absolutely. This one's going to Jen. Tana N., why is Jodi Arias allowed to wear regular clothes during the trial?
Well, they can't bias the jury and have her in these stripes and shackles while they're trying to, decide on a life or death sentence in the penalty phase. When you're going to see her in the stripes, again, it will be during sentencing. But as of right now, it's civilian clothes. This is standard. This happens all over. There's nothing not normal about it.
All right, now I'm going to put you both on the spot since I didn't fully get answers while I was out there in Arizona. Beth Karas first. Gut feeling, if you had to answer, I'm making you answer, what do you see this jury coming back with?
Well, there's three possibilities, life, death, or deadlock. Two of the three end in a life sentence, but I think it's a deadlock or death.
Got it, Jen. Last one.
I think they're going to look at those autopsy photos, and I think that they are going to go for a death penalty sentence, because once you see those, I think that's the strongest evidence Juan Martinez has, and that is the autopsy photos.
Well, I'm going to say the entire trial, I said there's absolutely no way that this girl is getting death, and I'm always wrong, but I actually think that she's going to get the death penalty, even just after closings and all the coverage that we did during it and following you both. And with that, I thank you both for doing this today. It was a lot of fun. Make sure you check out, obviously, Karas on Crime, the Trial Diaries, and TrialTalkLive.com. They'll both be there for the verdict watch. Going to be sitting outside the courtroom all day. Beth with her espresso beans for everyone, keeping everyone nice and full. But
My favorite.
And I believe I speak for everyone when I say really thank you. I mean, I sat there a little bit on verdict watch, but these two ladies sit outside that courtroom all day, every day until there's a verdict, not knowing how long this could go. So a big thank you really from everyone who follows all of us or any of us. It's really appreciated the work that you do, and it was great spending some time with both of you this week out in Arizona.
Great. Well, it was nice meeting you, Jarrett.
Nice being with everybody. It was
absolutely fun. So make sure you check out the sites. They'll be on the end of this video. Thank you all very much. Everyone have a great day.